Hello there, and if you're looking for any updates on the whole Marvel Zombie shipping drama and all of that, you're not going to find any of that here. That was yesterday's video. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not To Back. We're going to go over all the other stuff, not the Marvel Zombies thing. We're going to go over all the other stuff. We're going to have our Cult of the Now, which apparently I called Cult of the New last week. That was a horrible mistake. We're going to have our updates, our campaigns canceled and or not funding, and then of course all the new campaigns. We have like a ton of updates on Anastyr alone because Anastyr decided to drop like 14 expansions on you, and we'll talk about all of those here. So let's go ahead and start this off. As usual, timestamps to everything down below. We'll have everything. We'll have all the stuff I just told you, picks of the week, the upcoming campaigns, all that stuff, starting off with Cult of the Now. Cult of the Now is the segment where I take a look at a currently available game, something you can buy now without having to wait 14 months, without having to see incredible updates and jumps in your shipping prices. You get what you get it now, you get everything in ahead of time, you don't have to worry, none of that Kickstarter game found garbage that we're used to, that we all sign up for, and why you watch this video. Cult of Now this week is Clash of Cultures Monumental Edition. This is a game I actually finally just picked up. I've been trying to get my hands on it for a while, and I kept pushing it off, hoping to trade for it or something, and I finally caved, and I went ahead and got my hands on this one. So I haven't even opened it yet. I might do an unboxing on the channel, I don't know, but I had the original Clash of Cultures back in the day, and I've been wanting this Monumental Edition since I first heard about it. I finally picked it up, $112. On the one hand, that's a lot of money for a game in retail. On the other hand, it's a very, very big box, and on Kickstarter, that would be just as much, plus shipping, plus this, plus that, plus all of that. So, that's Clash of Cultures over on Game Nerds. You can check them out, as usual, not sponsored by Game Nerds, anything like that, just talking about the games. From there, let's go ahead and go into the cancellations and not funding, starting off with Anunnaki. I think that's how you say it. I'm not entirely sure. In general, Anunnaki Dawn of the Gods is cancelled. This is coming to you from Cranial Creations, who've done Barrage, they've done Golem, they've done a whole bunch of other games, but this is a little bit of a shift for them. This is a 4X Euro game. That's what they're leaning into. The Simone Luciani, Daniele Sabbia, Euro designers bringing us a 4X Euro game. The Euro side of things is absolutely there. The part that's always interesting is this is a very different game than what you typically expect from Cranial Creations. Big focus on the miniatures, a big focus on a $200 price point for the game, €89 for the base pledge, but bringing to €174 for the all-in, for the, I don't even know if it's all-in, for the Mythic pledge, with a whole lot of miniatures, all the various factions, that of course, if you want the game, you do want all of those. As a good indicator, we have 64 backers backing at the base pledge, we had 515 backing at the Mythic pledge, and then, this is the real kicker, we had 1,200 backing at $1. That's 1,200 people who wanted to contribute their voice to the conversation, but didn't want to select a pledge. And that's why I canceled, despite funding. Despite funding, they definitely got a lot of feedback about the price points, the focus, all these different things, and they're going to come back to Kickstarter. They're going to relaunch. It seems like they're aiming for roughly a month, although they didn't give us a firm date, just general ideas. I am paying attention to this one. I like Cranial Creations, I like the designers, but also this is a very big shift from the usual stuff, which is part of the reason it's in that zone of both doing well, while also wondering how much better it could have done. From there, we have 2 in the not funding category, although they both look, actually 3 in the not funding category, although all 3 do look like they will fund. We have IT Startup, the Office Lockdown game. This is a standalone expansion to IT Startup, which came out a while ago. This is a lighter card playing game, 159 backers, $7,300 out of an $8,300 goal, $8,400 goal. It'll definitely fun, that's not the question. This is a standalone expansion, so it's basically, you know, it's an expansion. They already had another game, but this one's standalone. You don't need the base game to play it. You could pick it up in the different pledge levels, and it's focusing on a little bit of gameplay mechanisms and a whole lot of IT humor. If you are someone that is in the IT world, if you're adjacent to the IT world, many of these jokes will resonate with you. They'll be fun, they'll be amusing. I remember covering the last campaign, the IT lockdown, back in the day, and they were just as funny back then. So from a thematic standpoint, I'm very interested in this game because I think all these jokes are on point. From a mechanical standpoint, I do think this game is lighter than what I'm personally looking for. Factor that in, take a look at the gameplay. I think it is leaning more towards a casual card game, a step up from Cards Against Humanity, but a step down from many of the things we're probably used to talking about on this channel. From there, we have Spirit Duels, a non-collectible competitive card game of evolving creatures in tactical combat. $12,000 raised on 154 backers out of a $15,000 goal, 22 days to go. Again, this will almost certainly fun based on how it's doing so far. From Daniel Miller, first created over here, and Spirit Duels is a card and dice game that is focusing on a very Pokemon-adjacent genre of a bunch of spirits, the spirits that you will evolve across the course of gameplay. You'll be rolling their dice to take actions with those dice, to use those actions to attack, to gather more resources, to buy more cards, to upgrade your spirits, to evolve your spirits, to use their magical abilities, the various factions they're involved with, and then having a variety of cards in your hand as well that just have a variety of abilities or other things on them past just, the actual spirits themselves. So that's what it's into. You can have a pre-constructed deck, you can have drafting, a few things like that. It looks like it's focusing in the 2-player head-to-head genre, light, simple, accessible, focusing on those who are looking for a 2-player head-to-head experience, specifically with a Pokemon theme. Pokemon, again, not Pokemon, but Pokemon adjacent. And you have stuff like this that looks like this with evolving spirits, definitely leaning close to that. We have $49 for the basic pledge, $59 for the Radiant pledge. That's what we have over here for this. And we have, oh, hey, look at this, the design a spirit line. All 3 of those lines are gone, so that's cool. That's $400 to help them design a spirit line with all of those gone. That is Spirit Duels, and that's basically it. Moving on from there, we have Damask. Damask by Radical 8 Games. 252 backers. This is over on GameFound. 6,800 pounds raised out of a 7,000 pound goal. 97% funded. This may be funded by the time you watch this. This is leaning into an Azul adjacent game, at least based on what I'm seeing so far on this one. The general theme of it is you're going to have these cubes in a row over here, and you're trying to take those to put them on your Damask. And what you're doing is you're going to be choosing tokens. You're going to be choosing those cubes until you've picked enough to have 2 different colors, slowly loading up your thing. So it has that Azul gameplay where you're being mindful of what's in the circle, of what you can take. You're being mindful of the patterns you can create, and how it will set up the next person to take their cubes at the same time. So a little bit of minding your own business and just a little bit of minding their business at the same time as you go through it. That's the core gameplay. You're going to be alternating between taking cubes, taking cards. There's a few core actions. You can take a Damask, you can take Silk cubes, or you can take another player's overstock. So it really leans into that Azul aspect. You have overstock, you have glass tiles crashing to the floor, you have selection. The taking a card is an interesting pivot from that, which could buying you some time. If I recall correctly, Azul stained glass had an action you could take that bought you time. I don't remember, it's been a while since I played the Azul stained glass. It could be, but either way, that's basically what's going on with Damask over here. We have 27 pounds, 27 euro, no pounds, 27 pounds for the base pledge of the game over here, plus of course shipping as well, and that's what you have going on with Damask. It's not doing incredibly well, but it's doing pretty decently. I would say it's interesting because I think the greatest strength Azul has compared to a game like this is Azul leaned heavily into the production value, and while this looks fine, it doesn't look Azul premium. And for a game that's like this simple and accessible, I think taking it that extra level, taking that extra notch, and really delivering premium components, think Chai, think of that kind of style of just over-the-top premiumness on top of the game, I think they could have a real winner here. As it is, I think they might have a very solid game, but one that may or may not have long-term success the way Azul did. Moving on from there to the update category, we have a whole bunch of updates. Some of them are as simple as saying, hey, this thing exists, feel free to back it because we talked about it, and it ends in a few days. Starting off with the Great Wall, hey, this thing exists, feel free to back it, we've talked about it already, and it ends in a few days. The Great Wall reprint from Awakened Realms, no major updates over here. There's a gameplay over on Cracklip's channel. I just had a gameplay, I dove into this one again because it's fun and because it's fun primarily, although also I do have upcoming probably the last day of this campaign, if I have to guess, I think Wednesday. On Wednesday, I should have a Play This, Not That between the Great Wall from Awakened Realms and After the Empire from Grey Fox Games. I've covered both those games already. I like both those games already. At the time, I gave both those games a 4 out of 5. And I have a small update and comparison between the two games if you want to check that out. They have some surface level similarities, a lot of differences as well at the same time. Do I need both? Either. You can check that out on Wednesday. I'll have a full coverage of that over there. Great Wall is fantastic though, which isn't really a spoiler. I thought I said After the Empire was also fantastic, so no real spoilers there. But yeah, you can check this one out. The big thing I will say is, and I said this last week too, this is not cheap. I think it's a great game. I think it's a game worth paying attention to, and I think it's a game worth getting for your collection. The general coverage of this game has been incredibly positive across the board, and diving into it again this week was just a reminder for me of how much I enjoy playing this. I lost, for context, so it's not about winning. I lost, but it's such a good game, and the pathways to victory you can pursue are so ridiculously satisfying, but the but part is that it costs a lot of money. This is not going to be a cheap game. Even the cheapest option over here is going to be equitable to buying 2 or 3 other games. This is a very, very good game, but you have to be comfortable shelling out for a premium experience. This is not for anyone who's just looking for, I want to maximize my gaming dollar. You're not maximizing your gaming dollar. You're getting a very good game. That's what the Great Wall is. So factor that in before you go ahead and back this one. Next up on updates, we have another just kind of hey exists. We have the Dark Order. The Dark Order, 8,300 backers, $829,000 raised. This thing will almost certainly cross 1 million. That last 2-day push over on Kickstarter is going to see this thing cross 1 million, which is good because I called that it would be over 1 million, and I like being right. Although on another one of these campaigns, I called that it would be over 1 million, and I'm definitely going to be wrong. But 8,400 backers, 830 $231,000. The Dark Order from Lucky Duck Games. No major changes since last time. Yes, it'll almost certainly hold this value. Not a guarantee because the price point compared to Destiny's is a little higher, but I still think it's a fairly safe back. And then just if you want to take a look at the game, there's a whole lot of daily reveals that have gone on in the past week and a half since we've talked about this. So yeah, you can check out the Dark Order. More stuff, more updates, more things to be just like not anything amazingly new. Here's a card revealed here, here's something revealed there, but more stuff for the game in case you are interested in what's going on with the Dark Order. You can check out my previous coverage in the game. I have both a review as well as, well, first impressions because we only had one case, as well as the should you back it, to back or not to back over on my channel. Last week I did an update. 2 weeks ago is when I did the full starting video. And from there we have Last Light. Last Light by Grey Fox Games. No major updates here. Last week I already talked about the fact that I had a two-player head-to-head game as well as a review over on my channel. You can check those out. Tom Vassell spoke about it over on his channel. You can check that out. And of course there's the campaign itself. This one's doing fairly well. We have $370,000 raised out of 2,400 backers. I think it'll cross 450 with 5 days left to go, but it's hard to say exactly. I noticed GameFound doesn't have the same last 2-day push that Kickstarter does. It does well in the last 2 days, but not to the same level that Kickstarter manages to do. It's something GameFound might want to look into because that feels like it should work the same way Kickstarter does. But either way, as far as the Last Light, the reason I'm talking about it now is just a reminder because this is the last time we'll be talking about it before it's over, although there will be late pledge options. This is the last time to talk about it in the sense that there are a whole bunch of extras you will get over here. You could late pledge it later, but the price will be going up based on what they said in the FAQ, so the price will be higher in the Pledge Manager, which means if you want this game, now is the best time to go ahead and back it. Although, based on yesterday's video, maybe not. So you can watch yesterday's video on Marvel Zombies in case you want the other side of whether you should always back at $1 or not. In any case, going back to Last Light over here, we have a whole bunch of exclusives of stuff over here, and this is a Grey Fox exclusive, meaning it's not Kickstarter exclusive or GameFound exclusive. It's Grey Fox exclusive, which means you might see it in future campaigns, you might see it at conventions. It's just not going to hit regular, widely available retail. You have a bunch of new Shilp Sculpts, you have a ton of new alien races for the game, you have a bunch of new tech cards, so the game you get over here, while you will absolutely be able to get Last Light cheaper in retail, what you get in retail will not be the same as what you get in Kickstarter over here. You can check on the most recent update for a bit of a coverage, not everything, it's not everything at all, but they go over a bunch of the exclusive stuff you're going to be getting over here. If you scroll down, you can see a bunch of cards. Build a small ship at your colony ship sector for free, exhaust this card. When you destroy an enemy ship, replace it with one of your ships of the same type. That is amazingly awesome. That's a great card. I mean, I can't wait to play Last Light and to make the game go to 30 light or something, because I almost want Last Light to be a drop longer, despite the accessibility being one of the main key points, and the game time being one of the main key points. I don't mind trying out these combos and getting a little more text in play, a little more ships in play, and have a slightly longer game. So it gives you the flexibility. Play to whatever score you want over there. But there's new text, there's new races, there's all these different things. At the end of the round, you may choose to get an opponent to gain a light, and you gain the best resource. That is huge. These things are fun. I'm interested in all the text, all the stuff, so that's going to be Last Light over here. And then the last update, although the longest before we eventually get to the new stuff, is going to be Anastyr from Mythic Games. Give me a second here, because I need a coffee break. It's actually not coffee, for whatever it's worth. This is not coffee. This is seltzer, which is like the worst thing you could possibly drink on camera, because seltzer just gives you bubbles in your throat, which means I'm more likely to burp. I don't know why I'm saying things anymore. 3,667 backers, $600,000 raised, 5 days to go. Anastyr from Mythic Games is, well, has a whole bunch of expansions to talk about. First of all, we have a whole bunch of stretch goals. I'm not going to do a full coverage of everything here. I'm not going to be going heavily in depth into all this stuff, because it's just too much stuff to go into depth while still having time for the rest of the video. Anastyr has a bunch of things, which if we can scroll down and find the daily reveals and all those things, not really reveals, stretch goals. They had a whole bunch of stretch goals to this game. This is a side-by-scroller game, which you can be rolling dice, having your characters, having your abilities, playing campaign play, as you just basically take out the enemies and try to tactically outmaneuver them while rolling dice, chaining your abilities, setting up your combos, all of that. Stretch goals over here, I'm just slowly going to scroll through this all because there's just a lot to cover. There's enemies, there's mounts, there's characters, there's all these different things over here. We have the High Father here. We're going to come back to the High Father later, or something similar to it. We have the Alt Servant. We have all these these mounts, the additional Wyvern. Again, I always said Wyvern. So sue me. We have more characters, more the Sky Warden. We have the Bone Swap game material. We have the Altstone Warrior, the Kurdai. We have the Sky Scroll Trouble doubled over here. Just a ton of the Stone Archers, the Mounted Brothers, just more and more characters, and more is still being unlocked. This is another, 5 days to go? Is that what it was? 5 days to go means this might hit if we're at 600 now, I think it'll almost certainly hit at least 800,000, especially once Mythic reveals the all-in pledge, which I imagine is coming. If I had to guess, with 5 days to go, I think we're looking at one more big box expansion, another $55 expansion, as well as an all-in pledge to bundle it all together. The all-in pledge will likely have a all-in, as well as an all-in with terrain. Sorry, an all-in, and then a gameplay all-in. That's likely what we'll see if past recent campaigns have anything to go by. Not a guarantee, we'll see, but I'm guessing at least one more big box expansion, which means this may well hit 800,000. It may cross a million. Little harder to say. The Mythic games in general have had a harder time crossing a million recently. It's likely going to be close either way. We'll find out. But from there, diving into some of the expansions very briefly, we have the All Mother Secret. This is mostly going to be me scrolling through what you can see on the page yourself. No heavy in-depth analysis. Again, this is just an update trying to show you all the stuff from mounts to enemies to characters, all the things you can get. The sculpts are amazing. I expect that from Mythic games because their sculpts are some of the best in the business, if not the best in the business. I say this every single time. It's not news here. From there, we get to the next expansion. Next expansion will be the Fog of Revolt expansion, another $55 expansion. All these expansions are $55 until we get to the accessory or component ones as opposed to the gameplay ones. So we have more miniatures, more everything here, more characters, more beasts you can ride, more sculpt mounted riders, all that stuff, and just more of everything in all these campaigns. This is the Alt of the Fog. Then we have over here the next $55 expansion, the Queen's Vow, the Necropolis. We have the Queen's Vow over here, which is giving you all of this. So we have these components, this stuff over here, that stuff over there. My words are so elegant over here as I say this and that and everything else. Another beast to ride, the Tamed Venator Rex. We have this dire Akron over here, which tell me if that doesn't look familiar. Tell me if that does not look in any way familiar to this guy over here. You see this thing over here? That versus that. Those things. This is the Wendigo from Zombicide Undead or Alive. Not Kong, obviously, but this is the Wendigo over here, and we have the Dire Akron over here. Very similar. I'm not complaining. I like the sculpt. I'm happy to have another similar one. Put them next to each other or something else. We'll figure it out. We have more stone and skeleton stuff. All these things. Again, incredible sculpts, left, right, and center. None of that is a surprise. That's Mythic Games. And from there, we go into the 3 new add-ons, which are more not gameplay ones, but, quality of life, nice-looking things. We have a very interesting one, which I can't tell if I actually want it or not. We have the Backdrop expansion for $20. What's the nice part is it'll be part of an all-in likely, which will make the decision to get it easier for me because I don't know if I would get this if it's not part of an all-in. The Backdrop expansion is giving you a backdrop, like it says over here. You're getting this back of the wall thing that goes on top of your board, so you can get let's see if we can show you. So you'll get something that looks like this. Because of the nature of it being a side-scrolling game, assuming you're both playing it looking at the board from the same angle, which if you're playing with 2 players is fairly easy. If you're playing with 3 players is fairly easy. 3 players I potentially would be across the table from one another, but for sure at 2 and possibly at 3, looking at it head on and having the side scrolling in front of you like this would be how I play. And I don't mind a bit of extra thematic immersion as long as it doesn't take away from the actual experience on the table. I don't think it would, though. I think this actually is a good idea, although I find myself incredibly skeptical as to whether it is or isn't. If nothing else, now that I think about it, my kids will love it when they're playing with the miniatures on the table, so for that alone it's probably worth it. But for me, board games are half toys for my children, and then the other half, my children like playing with them as well, not just me. We have more over here. We have the region terrain elements over here, the expansion, $20 for these terrain elements over here, just a bunch of terrain stuff that you can add to the board. Then we have a separate other terrain elements, so we have 3 different $20 expansions, $20 for the boss battle terrain elements, $60 for all of those. These amber dinosaur situation things, those I'm very excited, going back to my children playing with them. They currently love the whole Jurassic Park, Jurassic World. They're watching all the Lego stuff on Netflix, and they would love to have some sort of beast encased in amber. So I don't know what these will actually look like because obviously these are, renders and whatnot, but I am very curious to how well those turn out. I hope they turn out nearly as good as they look because they look cool to begin with, and also my kids would love them. So we'll see. Is this amber flowing out of the mouth? That's very cool. The Dragon Head Fountain. Very cool. Very cool. I like the other ones better. But that's what we have over here for Anastyr. A whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of content for the game. There will likely be an all-in drop, but I will not have time. I'm not going to be doing a full dedicated video on this one, so this is the last time I'm going to be talking about it. Will it hold its value? All of that. Yes, in general, Mythic games do hold their value. I talked about this last week already with my full video on it, but there's always a small caveat because they sell their games in the shop. But practically speaking, when you look at any Mythic Games production that's on Kickstarter and you look at the aftermarket for it, it always seems to have done a fine job holding its value, for sure at first and even as time goes on. Some do better than others. Super Fantasy Brawl does a decent job holding its value without being amazing, but also that was a kind of different campaign approach for them as well. That's more of an accessible one that is less the typical big box production you normally see from them. So, but even that does a fine job holding its value, if not as good as the others. But that's Anastyr. I believe this is a safe back, and then from there, we finally move into the new campaign. campaigns. Don't Let It Die, a co-op asymmetric survival board game, 1,000 backers, $47,000 raised. This is another game from Sam Milham, what's the name of his company? Great Games over here, Great Games, Sam Milham. This is actually a reprint of a previously existing game. That Sam Milham did the art for that one as well, and they did a re-deluxification of this game, bringing it to the table to Kickstarter through his company, Great Games. This is a 1-to-4 player cooperative survival game, as you have 14 rounds to kind of survive before the water comes and destroys all of you and the fire burns out, and you have to kind of feed your tribe, you have to keep the fire going, you have to go through a sequence of actions using the abilities of your characters to try to outlast and survive as the game progresses. Light co-op survival game, the original game is rated decently without being amazing. This is obviously bringing you, I don't know if there's any gameplay tweaks, I didn't see any information about whether there's a gameplay tweak or not. They're bringing you upgraded art, that's for sure, and 16 characters that you can combine in a whole bunch of ways because of the nature of picking 4 characters and just having a ton of options as far as how you combine your characters, how you utilize their abilities as you play through the game. Should you back it, should you not? Will it hold its value? Short version in general with Great Games is they don't do a great job holding their value. Sam Milham has built up a good backing of people who continuously drop in for all of his games. His games always look amazing. I'm still sad that I didn't get to the checkpoint, but also at the same time, his games generally don't hold the value in the secondhand market. And recent games, they've had some back and forth as far as reviews. I know his last game that I was also looking forward to was got a lot of critiques around the rulebook, a lot of critiques as far as whether you can actually understand how to play it properly from the rules, or whether you just have to kind of guess or go to the forums or all of that. That's never a good sign. It happens with companies, it happens with games. I'm always sympathetic, but it doesn't mean you should necessarily back them. So it's a tough one there. I would say if you want the game, in general, they don't have the greatest secondhand availability. You could back the game if you want it, but you're doing so without getting amazing exclusive or anything else, and a game that won't hold its value. So it's up to you over there. Moving on to Uprising, The Curse of the Last Emperor. Uprising, The Curse of the... That's not true. That's the original game. Uprising, Titans of the First Age. This is 2 expansions. I believe it's 2 expansions for Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor. This is also a reprint campaign for all of that, so you can go ahead and get any of the previous stuff. This is a cooperative 4X game. So the second 4X we're talking about already, and the second one that's a drift from the usual 4X genre. So we have the Euro Anunnaki, we have the Euro 4X, and then we have the cooperative 4X from Uprising. Uprising had a Kickstarter last year, did fairly well. I think it did like $300,000 if I'm not mistaken. It may have been higher. I'm going by memory over here. And then it delivered fairly quickly. It delivered with these gorgeous acrylic standees, did an amazing job, has been very well reviewed. I think it's an 8.5 on Board Game Geek in general, and also held its value just fine. We'll come back to that shortly. The biggest complaints it had was around the fact that people wanted more variety in the enemy factions. The 4X cooperative experience meant that you're fighting against these AI factions. People wanted more variety in the enemies, and then additionally the fact that when you roll dice, it had cascading failure. If you didn't roll well, you very frequently started going a downhill path very quickly, and an early turn bad rolls could devolve very quickly into you being stomped on. And so some of the expansions are addressing both of those things. There's going to be more characters, more factions, there's going to be more AI factions to fight against, and they have some, I don't know what the gameplay mechanisms are, but they are addressing the cascading failure aspect and the heavy punishing mitigation of the randomness of the dice rolls in this expansion over here. So they're trying to give you the same context over there, but the same basic game, but with more stuff plus improved stuff at the same time. This game will not be in retail. There is no retail for this game. Your options are Kickstarter or GameFound Now or the secondhand market, which also means should you back it, should you not. Short version is it'll hold its value. We'll go over the pledge levels in a second, but if you look at the original campaign, if it's anything to go by, this game, Uprising, has done a great job holding its value across the board. Almost all pledge levels, for the most part, are selling for above what people paid for this one. This game did a good job of offering you an accessible price point, gorgeous standees, again, acrylic color standees that look just as good, if not better than miniatures, depends on who you are and what your preference is. For me, I'm heavily a miniatures person over standees, and these give me a run for my money as far as just how good they looked, how premium they looked. Past that, the gameplay was giving you solid gameplay that has generally been well reviewed, with critiques, but, generally been well reviewed, and even those critiques are being examined now, and so I think this is just as likely, if not more likely, to hold its value than the original campaign. A little bit less likely because of how many people are backing it versus the original, but a little bit more because I think they're giving you the same game plus better. From the deluxe components over here, the Arch Nemesis expansion, the allies, the armory card pack, a whole bunch of options over here. And as far as the pledge levels, we have $199 for the hero pledge level, giving you all of those, $59 for the Titan pledge, $99 for the base Uprising pledge, and bundle the veteran pledge over here for $134 for all that stuff over there. And that's basically the end of the bundle plus ultimate for absolutely everything for $299 for the all-in. For context, the all-in from the first Kickstarter often goes for around that price point. This is all-in with all the new stuff as well. So yeah, overall I think this one will do just fine holding its value. That is Uprising, Titans of the First Age. Moving on, Wayfarers of the South Tigris. 4,300 backers, $270,000 raised. Wayfarers of the South Tigris is the newest game series from Shem Phillips from Garphill Games, bringing you dice placement of the South Tigris, whatever that. The South Tigris is a new hit. The last thing was the West Kingdom. This whole new series will be the South Tigris. All the stuff, the South Tigris, the this of the South Tigris, the that of the South Tigris, and Wayfarers of the South Tigris is dice placement. Utilizing the same general engine you've seen from him, the same general card system. If you see any of these cards, you'll recognize the general stylings, the victory points over here, the gold cost, all these different things that are very, very standard for the graphic design, for the accessibility. If you are familiar with the Garphill Games game, you're going to be familiar with this one as well. You can check out a full how to play from Meeple University, or a 3-minute overview from 3-minute board games. Both of them have content around the game already, and you can try the game on Tabletop Simulator. So full accessibility over here. Additionally, Garphill Games in general is a fairly standard Kickstarter person. That's not the right term. Kickstarter company. They know what to do when it comes to Kickstarter, is what I'm saying. They generally deliver on time. They generally are fairly consistent. Don't expect any real issues. They are consistent across the board, for better and for worse, because the pledge levels for this game over here are going to be $42 for the Wayfarer, which is giving you the base game plus the free promo pack. We have $40 over here, that's non-English. We have $60, $53 or so for the Coinfarer, which gives you all of the above plus 50 metal coins for an extra 53 plus 42 for an extra $11 to give you the 50 metal coins is what you're getting over here. And this is fairly standard for a Garphill Games Kickstarter. They give you the opportunity to get the promo pack, they give you the opportunity to get the metal coins, and then they give you the opportunity to get the base game, although you do pay more for the base game than you do compared to retail, compared to online retail specifically. Meaning if you back this game on Kickstarter, once you factor in the base pledge, plus you factor in the shipping, you are paying more for this game than if you just wait till it shows up in your local online game store. This does obviously depend on where you are. I always say the same things about their games. They do a great job of not leaning into the FOMO, and for that I give them credit. At the same time, pricing wise, the upside of the FOMO is the fact that you're giving people a reason to back. The downside of FOMO is you're giving people a reason to back, and so I always give them credit for not pushing people to heavily back, not giving them an amazing price so you can't get it later or any of that stuff. But the flip side is it means that I also generally caution that if you want the game, especially if you don't care about the metal coins, the promo pack that much, you can definitely get this game much cheaper later from your local online game store if you're US based. If you're not US based, check where you are, check that it might apply to you, it might not, it depends where you are. Again, they do a great job of being very consumer friendly, and I always feel bad about this. It just means that I also recommend deciding what to do when you want, as opposed to necessarily getting the Kickstarter. As far as the game itself, like I said already, it's dice placement, utilizing the same mechanics and general overview, not mechanics, the same graphic design and accessibility of their prior games, but with a much bigger focus on dice placement as you gather cards, as you slot them into various areas depending on what cards you're getting, whether they go part of the sky, part of the ocean, part of the land, as you build out your terrain, as you use your dice on the spots to activate them. Looks intriguing. I'm intrigued. I haven't loved their games in the past, except for Hadrian's Wall, which is fantastic, but I do like dice placement, so I am very curious on whether this one ends up being a fit for me or not, as players slowly move their way, eventually getting to their end zone and triggering endgame and one more round. And that is Wayfarers of South Tigris, which brings us to G.I. Joe Mission Critical. 875 backers, $111,000 raised. This is basically Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid with a G.I. Joe theme pasted onto it. Not necessarily a problem, it just depends on which theme you prefer, or it depends on how much content you want, because Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid definitely has much more content than G.I. Joe does, at least right now. The games are leaning very heavily into the exact same concept. You're going to have your characters in the center zone, you're going to be playing cards that dispatch various characters that are spawning in the areas around the grid, and then that will eventually panic the areas as a certain number of troops go there, which means on your turn, you need to take actions to go ahead and head there and start fighting them. You'll have action tokens that'll be very based on the number of players, then you'll start attacking the cards. Combat in these systems is very interesting. They're using something called the Guardian system, which is basically a way of saying, hey, that stuff we did in Hero Rangers Powers of the Grid and Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, we're going to extrapolate to other systems and call it the Guardian system. But basically what happens is the enemies attack, and then you have to attack the enemy cards, and so you're going to go back and forth between you taking actions and the card row taking actions, but if you can take out the card row won't activate. So you kind of have this interesting option to choose what to focus your attention on and what to try to punch down and remove from the card row. Very interesting tactical planning around the game. For me, the biggest weakness of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid is the movement feels completely uninteresting. The actual combat, interesting puzzle, lots of powers and abilities, tons of characters to choose from. I hope to have full coverage of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid before this campaign ends. Not a guarantee, but I hope to. The games are basically the same game. Small minor differences as far as what they do. So for instance, in Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, you're going to have your specific, Zorg suits or whatever I don't know Power Rangers well, I'm sorry. But you're going to have your unique vehicles that are tied to your Power Rangers that you can eventually spawn as you take down enemies. And over here you'll have vehicles. You'll have various army vehicles you can spawn. Again, similar basic game with a few small differences in the actual gameplay. As far as the pledge levels over here, we have $99 for the No Average Joe, which is giving you the base game, plus the Retro Snake Eyes Renegade exclusive promo, and the Vehicle Pack 1 exclusive promo. And then we have the Mission Complete all in, giving you all of the stuff, and additionally the additional expansions on top of that. Should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? Short version is the base game alone, the MSRP listed on the page over here. If you just go by MSRP alone, you're better off getting the base game at retail. The base game of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid costs you roughly $72, $73 online from your local game store, and over here it's costing you $99 plus shipping. That's going to be $115 versus $75 or so. Now the good news is you do get a few extras, and those are Renegade exclusives, which means your options of getting those are not going to be at your online store. They're going to be at Renegades online. So the question is, what do you prioritize? If you prioritize simply getting your hands on this game, go ahead and back it now. If you prioritize maximizing your return and you don't care at all about the extras, then for sure get it at retail. And then if you're in the middle ground's where it's a bit annoying, which is you kind of want the extras but you want to save money, in which case back it, get the base game at retail and get those extras directly from Renegade online. Not as much of a guarantee that they'll have options or access to them, but they often do and sometimes do. So yeah, that's the middle ground one. That's the one where you're being forced a little bit into the FOMO because of the fact that you might be able to get everything, you might not. The ideals would be that you either just want everything and you just back it on Kickstarter because you don't care, or that you want to save as much money as possible, in which case buy this later at retail for $75-$80 instead of the $115 it'll cost you now with a few extras thrown in. And that is that is G.I. Joe Mission Critical from Renegade Games. Moving on, we have Oranienburger Kanal from Spielworks. This is a harder one for me because Spielworks games in general, they recently had another game found. They've had Kickstarters in the past. I generally have been fairly critical of Spielworks games. Not critical from a stance of being mean to them, but stance from their games I find don't look pretty, and they cost a premium price point, and they don't do a great job holding their value. And so I've always found them to be in the category of, hey, in theory I'd love to try another Heavy Euro, but I have plenty of other Heavy Euros that don't have those problems. I have plenty of Heavy Euros I haven't played yet that do look pretty, that are cheaper, and hold their value better than these. And so I find myself a little bit less intrigued in the Spielworks catalog, despite respecting the fact that they clearly put out some solid games that are well liked. They're just more expensive and less pretty looking than other games. That's generally in the past what their story has been. This one's a little bit different, not because any of the rest has changed, but because the most recent game, Oranienburger Kanal, is from Uwe Rosenberg, and it's utilizing systems that he's used in Le Havre and Ort Labora, that card wheel system. It's touting itself as the next evolution in a game that's designed specifically to be a 1 or 2 player game, which has me intrigued because I generally like Le Havre 2 players. I like Last Road at 2 players. I don't mind Ort Labora 2 players is fantastic. The idea of another game considered to be the next evolution of that series certainly intrigues me, and it's going to run me €49 to get the base game plus the 2 expansion promo packs. You could spend €40 alone. I recommend once you get in the game, get those 2 expansion packs. At the same time, those problems I mentioned are there. I can get this for €49 plus shipping, or I can get another Uwe Rosenberg game that I haven't played yet and get something else for cheaper, and as well as the fact that this doesn't look pretty, at least not to myself. Using my own personal opinion as a counter, I just don't. I think it looks like a Spielworks game. It doesn't look like an Uwe Rosenberg game, if that makes sense. This might be amazing. It may well be. I'm very intrigued by the game. As far as the game itself, the game's going to be run across 7 rounds as you use the same resource wheel that you've seen in other games from Uwe Rosenberg, as you build these buildings on the zones, and you're going to activate the buildings both when you build them in an enclosed spot, fully enclosed on all 4 sides, or when you actually enclose a building that is already built, so you enclose the 4th side, as well as when you connect any building to 2 other buildings. So it's going to have that puzzling nature as you try to get the right buildings, as you try to figure out how to activate them, to gain the resources, to score your buildings twice a game. It has very much an Uwe Rosenberg feel, at least from what little I've seen of the game. I haven't played the game, I'm just going by what I'm seeing on the campaign and the various videos I've watched. But past that, that's what's being brought here as far as the game itself. Past that, as far as should you back it, should you not, it's a hard one to say. Spielworks games in the past generally have not held their value, but an Uwe Rosenberg game is a different conversation, and a low availability Uwe Rosenberg game, 947 backers, that's good for a Spielworks game, but that's a low availability compared to your typical Uwe game. And so I am curious to see how this one does. I think this one has a better chance of holding its value contrasted with prior Spielworks games, while also not being certain that €50 plus shipping is going to be enough for people to be picking this up on the secondhand market, as well as factoring in the look. Games can do well despite not looking great. Splotter is a testament to that, but I wonder in this one. So I'm going to say that I am skeptical this will hold its value, while totally prepared to be wrong on this one contrasted with other ones. And that is basically Oranienburger Kanal, that I'm probably mispronouncing by the way. Moving on to Waste Nights Beyond the Horizon and expansion. 2,300 backers, $154,000 raised. This is the expansion to Waste Knights. This is going to bring you Waste Knights as a choose-your-own-adventure RPG adjacent game set in post-apocalyptic Australia as you try to figure out how to survive, how to wander around, how to kill the various things you need to kill, how to gather the resources, level up, get more gear, get more weapons, repair your weapons when they break because you decided to roll that extra die or whatever it is, as well as trying to, well, survive, and then go through the specific quest or journey you're on, the campaign story, interacting with the story points, and flipping through that giant book full of tons of adventures, tons of choices, tons of just what you're going to do, how you're going to try to survive, which direction you're going to take, who you're going to interact with, whether you try to sneak or attack, all these different elements in this choose-your-own-adventure RPG game. A lot going on in Waste Knights, and Beyond the Horizon is the water-focused expansion. You're going beyond the horizon. The map changes, if we can find that central map over here, up here. The map changes over here, so you're going to have the central map. You're going to be wandering around to various locations. You're going to have new resource puzzles. You're going to have boats added to the game, all while maintaining the same elements that you know and like of the game, while adding new elements to the gameplay at the same time. That's going to cost you €55 for the Fearless Sea Dog Kickstarter exclusive version of the game, and then €180 gets you the all-in, although I don't recommend the all-in. Let's talk about that in a second. But €180 is going to get you the all-in, which includes the original base game, retail edition of the base game, the Tales from the Outback retail expansion, the Kickstarter version of the Beyond the Horizon expansion, the exclusive miniature pack, the Outback Chronicles, and all unlocked stretch goals. Okay, that's going to be $180, but if you scroll down to what's going on, this stretch goal slowly being unlocked, you can check all this stuff as you go through what's being unlocked. The campaign is doing well so far, but if you look at the optional buys over here, we have the pledges, $55, $180, €180, not dollars, and then if you look at the add-ons, we have the Castaway add-on for €9, we have the playmat for €25, the dice tray for €10, the dice set for €10, the Outback Chronicles for €7, the Kickstarter exclusive miniatures pack for €20, this is from the previous campaign, giving you more miniatures than the previous campaign, and then we have these over here, €70 for the retail version of the game over here, and €40 from the Tales from the Outback. If you add up all the things that you want in the Scourge of Land and Sea, basically, if you get Fearless Sea Dog over here, and you add up everything else but ignore the base game over here, and then get the base game at retail, you will end up getting the base game a lot sooner, that you'll be able to dive into sooner and start playing, while still getting the rest for cheaper than that all-in pledge. That all-in pledge might be a savings for some people, but if you are a US consumer, if you are someone in the US and perhaps other places as well, you are better off getting all the stuff you want separately and then getting the base game at retail now. You'll save money and you'll have the base game that you can try now instead of a year from now. So I recommend that in case you're interested. There's always reasons why these are like this. Again, same issue as we have with as I have with Wayfarers of South Tigris. There are many exceptions. There's many reasons why someone might do something differently or do that or do this, but I would say if you're interested in getting the base game now and saving a few bucks, just add it all piecemeal to your cart and do it that way. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? In general, Waste Knights has been a little more in the middle zone. If you look at the original Kickstarter, not the original Kickstarter, this is the second edition. If you look at the second edition Kickstarter and you look at the secondhand market on it to see how well it did, the short version is that it does decently without doing amazing. So there are people who have sold it for what they got, there are people who sold it for more than what they got, and there are people who sold it for less than what they got, which puts this squarely in the category. You know, if you want to get it, if you're focusing on getting it for yourself, there's a decent chance you can get your money back if you find it's not a game for you, but also not a guarantee, and that's also factoring in you're gonna have to figure out what you need to get over there to get the original Kickstarter version of the game, to get all the extras from that as well. So it's one that's not like a stronghold your value, but one you can get most of your money back if you find out that Waste Knights is not a game for you. Moving on to Fliptown from Stephen Aramini. I'm pretty sure I say Armani every single time, but it's Stephen Aramini, I believe. I'm getting focused on the wrong thing. Fliptown over here, 1,300 backers, $35,000 raised. This is a strategic flip and write game for 1 to 4 players. Originally designed as a solo game, but heavily throwing in all the other elements as well. And I always say it that way because in general, people are always worried that solo is tacked on. Solo is not tacked on in this game. If anything, 2 to 4 players is tacked on, but it works because enough people were like, hey, I like this game, but I want to play it at 2 to 4 players. I was one of those people. And so yeah, so this is Fliptown over here. Fliptown from Stephen Aramini, giving you a Western-themed flip and write game. Every single round, you're going to flip 3 cards. You're going to assign 1 card for the region that you can go to draw things in. 1 card is the value of what you can do in that region, and then 1 card becomes your poker hand that you will mark in the poker hands as you go. Every single round has 5 turns. That means you're going to be developing a hand of 5 cards, a typical poker hand, as you go through it, and trying to figure out what extra points or resources you get from your poker hand, while being mindful of the locations you're going across the 3 rounds of the game. You're going to be mindful of the sheriff who's trying to arrest you for the various wanted symbols you have. You're going to be going to all the buildings where you can start marking off benefits and making you better and more efficient in different areas and giving you competitive advantages, or perhaps playing your own little miniature game where you can just reactivate buildings and get chunks of points that way, and you're trying to potentially dig graves and go on a trail and rob various things from trains to cattle cars to farms to whatever it is, or then go dungeon diving, not really dungeon diving, cave diving, and go underground mining over there. A whole bunch of pathways forward, a whole bunch of options as far as how you interweave those tracks in what is a fairly standard strategic flip and right game with multiple interweaving tracks. Fairly standard is probably the wrong terminology, but we've seen it done before. This is another instance of it being done well. The pledge levels over here are going to run you $25 for the basic copy, a few print and play options, a few getting 2 copies options, but $25 plus shipping is going to be a basic Fliptown. And as of right now, there is one Kickstarter exclusive. It sounds like we're going to get a bit more, but I'm not certain. We currently have Kickstarter edition extras included for backers. We have a few special treats, more extras soon, but right now we have a new character. The relevance for that is this is a game that, as of right now, the should you back it, would otherwise, without this, be kind of a no. I mean, the game's great. I like the game. I do recommend the game, but at $25 plus shipping, when this game does hit retail, it will be cheaper than that. That's just the nature of the game. It almost certainly will be cheaper when you're buying it online from your local game store, contrasted with paying $25 plus shipping. The main reason to back this now would be if you want those various extras, if you want the extra characters, if you want whatever else extra comes here, and for that, it kind of depends what happens. For a single card, it probably won't hold its value, although you might want that single card. The more extras there are, the more likely it'll be to hold its value, but that means that it's starting to fall into that category of it depends what you're looking for. If you want to ensure you get the exclusives and you're not hunting around the secondhand market, well, you can already go ahead and back it. If you want a game that will hold its value, I'm skeptical it will, even as they unlock things. And if you just want to get the cheapest game possible and you're not worried about exclusives, get it at retail. This is a solid game worth picking up, and it'll run you, I don't know, $17, maybe $20 at retail. I don't have the answer in front of me until it actually shows up, but it'll be less than it is on the Kickstarter. That's the nature of small box games. But that is Flip and Right by Stephen Armini, a great roll and write games, a flip and write game of Western theme. Moving on to Cytress, an immersive cyberpunk game. 463 backers, $38,000 raised. This one has no Kickstarter exclusive. There's a whole bunch of things going on here. So Cytress is a game in which you're living in the undercity of whatever futuristic world, cyberpunk world this is. You're trying to accomplish missions, and every single mission is going to have 4 things you're being mindful of. The rewards for the mission, who the mission's against, who the mission is for, and you're going to be lining up all these cards as you try to figure out how to optimize the selections of the missions you're going for as you make choices as far as living in the undercity or moving your way up to the top of the city. Thematically, the game seems very intriguing. Mechanically, some of the thematic aspects, I don't have a good feel for how those interweave. This game it has enough going on here. It's worker placement. It has enough going on that I'm not fully clear on how some of the thematic elements intertwine with the actual mechanics of the game. And the pledge levels for this game are all over the place. They have a lot of pledge levels, which makes this very confusing to figure out what the best thing to do is. And with only 463 backers and with like 700 pledge levels, that's like less than 1 pledge level per person. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but basically we have the base game, $56 for the Founder's Experience over here, which gives you the board game and access to the pledge manager. For $94, we have the narrative experience. The narrative experience is all being unlocked over there, and we have that's going to be all the narrative stuff thrown into your game for $40 more. For $152, we have the Cyberpunk experience, which brings you all the narrative stuff, all the Cyberpunk stuff thrown into your base game. For $439, we have the Divine experience. The Divine experience is divine. It's $439, but hey, it gives you all the Divine extras on top of the other things over there. It's 4 pledge levels, but like that's a level of just upping it to the next ante, the next ante, the next ante. Now, granted, many larger campaigns, command campaigns, mythic campaigns, you do start to see that broken out, but even in those games, they usually fall into established patterns. You have the main pledge, the pledge plus expansion, you have the gameplay all in, and the all in. That's usually the pattern you go with here. And here we have like the narrative, the base, the steampunk, and the divine. That's a whole different conversation, and that's also on a smaller campaign with only 464 backers. We've gained 1 in the past few minutes. Overall on Cytress over here, this one's a hard one to dive into. There's no real stretch goals as far as exclusives over there, but they do say that many things will be printed in limited runs with less availability. So it's that FOMO adjacent. Nothing's exclusive, but it will potentially have a harder time getting your hands on it. And with 464 backers across 4 different pledges, I believe that. I believe this is one that there'll be less retail availability and less secondhand availability. So I would say as far as this one, if you're interested in backing this one, you should probably back it if you want to guarantee the specific stuff you want, given how confusing everything. We lost a backer. Never mind, we just lost a backer. It's all over now. I would recommend going ahead and backing this one if you want it for yourself and you're not worried about holding its value, because hunting down the specific thing you want later, I mean, basically just divide by 4. You're talking about like 120 copies of each. I know it's not exact, but just roughly 120 copies of each pledge. That's going to be tricky to hunt down, and I don't see a wide retail availability on this one, so that's up to you over there. As far as will it hold its value, I'm guessing it won't. Just again, same general conversation. Anything that doesn't manage to pull people in on Kickstarter likely isn't pulling people in after the fact either. And this is expensive enough and does not have enough demand that whatever cool aspects of the game are working, I have a hard time seeing this as being a game that will hold its value long term. Moving on to the last one, Through Ice and Snow. Last one, then we'll do picks of the week and upcoming campaigns. Through Ice and Snow. Through Ice and Snow over on Kickstarter, 1,566 backers, $113,000 raised. This is coming to you from Red Tomatoes, I believe. Two Tomatoes games. They have a bunch of games under their belt, although this one does seem to be the most expensive and most successful of the games they have done on Kickstarter. This is giving you worker placement with unique workers as you place your various workers on their specific columns, if I can scroll down and find it here. Basically, the thematic aspect of the game is you're on a journey. You're on a journey of voyage with all these other ships, and all your ships are traveling together for safety and numbers and all of that. Although on the way, you can make different choices as far as what happens with your ships. Where do you stop? What do you do? How do you make sure to keep your ship running? What about the fuel? What about the feeding of people? All these different elements as you try to manage your own ship within the context of a greater fleet. You'll take turns making decisions as far as where the fleet goes. Again, safety and numbers. You gotta vote for whoever is going to actually be moving forward. You can hunt various animals, get more food. You can build various buildings for your ship, or not really building so much as things you can do. You can go ahead and get more people. You'll be getting more workers. They'll be placing down the specific worker placement zones across over here. We have specific and unique workers that will go into their own unique areas to take the specific actions in this general worker placement area they're all fighting over and vying for the specific spots. So it's worker placement, a dash of survival, a dash of, making sure your ship has enough coal, a dash of making sure your people have enough food, a dash of just general survival while you try to thrive at the same time as you go make your way through across this journey and voyage in through Ice and Snow from Two Tomatoes games. Pledge levels over here are a fewfold. We have the basic Explorer pledge, which is basically the basic pledge over here, $53. We have the $80 Captain pledge, which gives you the Myths and Legends expansion. And then we have the Admiral's pledge, which gives you the additional Captain's log as well on top of all of that. So still more pledges than I'd like ideally, but they have the Captain's log covered over here. So what is the Captain's log? It's a journal where you can track each of your plays while simultaneously be given challenges to complete in your expeditions. So it's a little bit of just a nice extra upgrade to track things, as well as adding in a degree of something extra gameplay-wise to interweave with the game that you're getting over here. As far as will it hold its value, will it not, should you back it, should it not? In general, Two Tomatoes games have not done the best at holding their value. This one is a little different, but if you look at their prior games, they generally, whatever their prices on Kickstarter, if you're trying to sell in the secondhand market after the fact, once you determine it's not for you, if you determine it's not for you, generally they do take a hit on the value. Now this one is a bigger game with a higher degree of backing. I mean, 1,600 backers with 25 days to go, that is doing much better than their general campaign, so the demand for this one is clearly higher, which does always add that little bit of a question mark to, okay, great, their prior campaigns lost a little bit, how will this one do? I still think this one, just the price point wise, is high enough that I think this is one that is less likely to hold its value down the road. It's not a guarantee, obviously, nothing's ever a guarantee, but I think this is one where if you want to guarantee the game, if you want to lock it in, go ahead and back it, but I think the secondhand market in this one will take a hit on it, not necessarily a huge hit, but I think it will sell for less than what you're pledging for it on Kickstarter. And that is all the things, which means it's time for the picks of the week. Picks of the week are always two things, and it's always from the current campaigns, which means none of the Anastyr or anything like that. It's current campaigns onwards, which means going from where we left off, it's from Don't Let It Die onwards, and it's picking two things. The game that I am most personally interested in, whether I've played it or not, and then the game I think is most likely to hold its value. This is not the cheapest game, it's the one that is most likely to hold its value, Kickstarter versus retail or versus whatever, versus secondhand market. For the one that's most likely to hold its value, I'm going with Uprising. I think Uprising is a safe lock as far as being a game that will hold its value, and the one that I'm most confident looking at here and saying, hey, this is a good back. If you're interested in the game and you're uncertain whether it makes sense to get this one, I think it does. If you're not interested in the game, don't get it. This is not a good investment. But if you're interested in the game and you're just not sure whether it's for you or not, I think this is a fairly safe back that you can get your money on, but get your money back on. As far as the game that's my personal interest pick, I'm going to go with Fliptown. There were a few over here that were contenders in different ways, including Wayfarers of the South Tigris, that I like dice placement, and I am overdue for liking one of these Garpol games, but at the end of the day, I look at these cards over here, and it reminds me of his other games, and I can't tell if this is going to be something that the dice placement saves me, or whether there's some formula about their games that just doesn't work for me, practically speaking. And so, because I was inclined to go with Wayfarers, I will go with the safe pick of the one that I have already played and really enjoyed, which is Fliptown from Stephen Armini, a very designer of Sprawlopolis, and a very, very solid flip and write game that does a great job of interweaving the theme and just being incredibly satisfying to check off those boxes the same way I do in any of these flip and write games. And with that, as far as the campaigns next week, we have a few things coming up. We have The Flood, which I'm very intrigued by. It's very interesting because I expect to be disappointed by The Flood, but this game basically, it looks like Catan adjacent. It looks like it's basically saying, hey, Catan was a great game, why don't we redo that with another theme? So I'm kind of expecting to be let down by it, but the production looks great, the theme looks great, the art looks great, and I am compelled and I'm very, very interested to see if this one works for me. This is going to be launching tomorrow on May 3rd, as will all of these, by the way. We have Ra from 20th Century Games. This is also another one that'll be launching May 3rd, I believe, I'm pretty sure, but this is basically going to be 3 days to go, so wait, 3 days to go, maybe a little longer, maybe in a few days. It's coming very, very soon is what I'm trying trying to say. Ra is going to be from 20th Century Games. It's going to be the reprint version with art by Ian O'Toole, making Ra available once again. Great game, worth paying attention to. And then lastly, we have Euthia, Torment of Resurrection. This will be launching, actually. By the time you watch this video, this is launching in a matter of hours. So Euthia is going to be coming back to Kickstarter with new expansions, new content, new things for the Euthia, Torment of Resurrections from Dia Games. And that is everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks so much for sticking around, and as always, have a good one. Do you know, recently, my family thinks that I've become addicted to connect-the-dot games, but they're wrong. I know where to draw the line.